In 3, 2. Hello, you are listening to Finding My Way, a podcast where we interview students, faculty, and alums of various academic disciplines to help prospective students learn more about the fields that they're interested in. Today, we're joined by Hanna Henderson, a junior at USC studying business administration from Toronto, Canada. In addition to her academics, Hanna is a D1 swimmer and was on the national Canadian team for over 5 years. Hanna, thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to join us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited. And you are the first athlete we're having on this show, so I'm really excited to hear your perspective of what it's like being a student and managing all of that with the USC coursework. So I think the first question I want to ask is, why USC? You came all the way from Canada, so it must be a big reason why.
Yes, it was definitely a big decision. I think I always wanted to come to the States for college, and especially being an athlete, they don't offer full scholarships in Canada for being an athlete. So I knew I wanted to come to the U.S. I knew I loved USC based on my visit here, my grade 11 year in high school. And I loved that I could do my undergrad and my master's degree in 5 years here. So that was a big sway for me, along with feeling very comfortable with the team and loving the campus and the facilities and the amenities of just being an athlete here. You get so many perks, so it's pretty cool.
So what was it like when you were first touring all these different schools?
It was definitely stressful.
Yeah. It
was a lot. Some people do all 5 of their visits back to back. You're allowed 5 visits as an athlete. You can visit 5 different schools over the course of 2 years. Some people do them all immediately, like 5 back-to-back weekends. They're in grade 11 when you're allowed to start doing them. I chose to spread mine out a little bit more because I thought that'd be exhausting. And I ended up canceling some that I decided I wasn't interested in the school. And I ended up visiting Georgia, Michigan, Northwestern, and USC. And I canceled Cal, Florida, and I think I'm missing one, but that was kind of my route here.
And what's it like when you're actually touring? Do you get to meet the teams, the coaches, everything like that? Maybe practice with them? Or?
You're not allowed to practice with them. That's a rule. You're not. The NCAA doesn't let you train with the school while you're on the trip, but you're hosted basically by the team, and it's usually 2 days. You're allowed on campus for 48 hours. They pay for like your food, your hotel. Sometimes you'll stay in the dorms with the athletes one night, so you get the experience of like what it'd be like living there and training there. And then they can take you to do whatever you want. Like when I came here, I stayed in the dorms both nights with the team. I went out to dinner. I went to Kazunori, nice. Which was a huge perk of coming. I went to Kava with the coaches, and you kind of will go on different lunches, different dinners with the team. They just want you to get a feel for like what the program is and the people and the culture. To
see if there's like good chemistry fit there.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then as far as actually going to the school afterwards, what kinds of things were you like looking out for? Like, what did you really want out of a school?
Yeah, so a lot of schools have similar perks. You'll get like usually free meals. You'll get there's different sponsors. For example, like we're Nike and Speedo. I like that. I love Speedo racing suits, and that's what I've always raced in. Some schools are tier, some schools are arena. So that was one of the things that swayed me here. My big thing was academics. I loved that USC had a great swim team, but they also were really strong in academics. I loved the business school here especially, and I also loved that I could do my progressive degree, as I said. So I think that was my final factor in coming here. I was between Georgia and USC, and both of them had the progressive degree option where I could do my undergrad and my master's, but USC had better academics in my opinion, and they had a better network for after school where I could meet tons of other alum that would help me with my journey of finding what I want to do.
The Trojan Network.
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of the things that is not talked about enough. But in a business mindset, that's what you have to always be thinking of.
Exactly.
So you decided to choose USC because of the PDP and also because of the academics. Can you tell us a little bit about the PDP program and what's really in it?
So I can't tell you fully because I'm not in it quite yet. I've been limiting down what progressive degree I want to do, but essentially you combine your master's degree and your undergrad degree between 4 to 6 years typically. I am doing mine in 5 for eligibility reasons. Because of COVID, we got an extra year of swimming eligibility, so I want to swim for all 5 years, whereas normally you have 4. So that's why I decided to do the extra year for that reason. But usually you apply your junior year once you know what program you want to be in. You have to complete a certain number of units and have a certain GPA, and then you need letters of recommendations from professors or other people in the industry, and then you apply. So okay. I'm working through the application process right now, and looking for kind of the letters of recommendation, and I'm hoping it works out. But I'm looking to go into the entrepreneurship and innovation masters.
Really?
Yeah.
That's exciting. To create your own business?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
You brought up an interesting point of the COVID year and how that played a role in your eligibility. What did the COVID year really look like for you, and being a swimmer, being on the national team and everything like that? What did that year really entail?
It's kind of wild. I was training for the Olympics. I had been swimming and been homeschooled for 2 years at that point, and swimming for the Canadian team. And I was in Florida on training camp when everything started going south in February, March time. And we got sent home. And from the time I got on the plane to come back to Canada to when I landed, everything had shut down in Canada. Like all schools, all transportation, Olympic trials had been canceled, and at that point we were 5 days away from like my shot at making the Olympics. And everything in my life leading up to that point was about the Olympics. So I went from my entire life changing. So from training every day and my whole life being about that one race, to then having 3 to 4 months off of swimming, which I hadn't even taken more than like a week in the past 2 or 3 years, was pretty wild.
Yeah. Was it like a sucker punch for you right there? It
was and it wasn't. I think at first I thought it was awesome because I was like, oh, I get a break. I was doing not as well mentally at that time. I think I had too much of a focus on making the Olympics, which sounds crazy, but if you swim every day and your whole day every day is about the one goal, that by the time you get there, you're so stressed out that you're not going to achieve that goal. And mentally, I think I was slightly depressed because I was so scared about not making the Olympics. I also had a very mentally abusive coach at the time, so that had a role in it too. But I think having COVID kind of gave me perspective into what's really important in my life. And it was more important for me to try and make the Olympics and be a good swimmer and be a good person and be mentally good and stable than actually go to the Olympics. And I realized that. I got injured the following year and didn't end up going to 2021 Olympics in Tokyo, but I did learn a lot from having COVID, and I think honestly it was good for me. I know it wasn't good for a lot of people in their experiences, but for me and my mental health and Hanna as an athlete, I think it was really good.
I'm glad. It kind of forced you to strike a balance between everything rather than just throwing all your eggs in one basket of going to the Olympics.
Exactly.
Is that something that's still kind of difficult to deal with? The balancing of the work life and also the practice and everything? Every
day. I think I was talking to my roommate about this actually recently. Sometimes we'll have like a bad practice in the morning, and then the whole day your mood is just like shitty. You're like grumpy or kind of just off and you don't know why. But the fact that you can have a practice and then feel bad after just says how much you care about the sport. Because in the grand scheme of things, like one practice doesn't really mean much, but because it's so much of our life, it really has an impact on like everything we do. Which is kind of crazy. So I think it's very important for athletes to have other passions outside of the sport, and I don't think it can deter from you doing well in the sport at all. I think a lot of successful athletes do really well because they have that balance.
they're able to take a break from it
Exactly.
and focus on other things.
Yeah. Like when I'm there at swimming, I want to be 100% in at swimming.
Yeah.
But when I'm at school, I want to be able to focus on school and not be thinking about the shitty practice I had earlier that day, because that just seems kind of pointless.
Do you do that though?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm working on it. I think I definitely do it less than I used to, and I'm cognizant of it and like trying to get better about it, but it's hard.
Okay.
It is.
I mean, to be fair, I feel like just learning how to strike that balance is something that's takes time, because you're at such a different level than a lot of other students and what they need to do in terms of your workload and everything that's on your plate. So props to you for learning that.
Thank you.
How long has swimming been a part of your life?
I started when I was 8.
Okay.
I don't think I took it very seriously at that point, which
You
I think is good.
You didn't want to be an Olympian at 8 years old.
No.
Weird.
I think I grew up with parents that weren't athletes, which I'm honestly so grateful for. I had a lot of friends whose parents were athletes and put so much pressure on them from a young age to do well. And I saw so many people drop out because of the pressure of that, or they felt like they weren't living up to their parents' expectations. And because my parents knew so little about swimming, if I had a bad meet or a bad time, they were like, good job, like, that's amazing. I've never seen you swim better. And I was like, okay, great. So I've really appreciated that they've been very supportive. At times I do wish they understood it a little bit more, because sometimes I'll call them and explain how difficult my week's been with swimming and school, and they're like, oh, like, I was able to manage it. I'm like, okay, well, you didn't do like 20 plus hours of being an athlete on top of it. So I think it's hard to relate without having done it, but I also really appreciate the fact that they didn't have that growing up too.
So where did this drive come from?
I think I was naturally good at it. I got into it because a friend who could never hang out was always at swimming. So I was like, oh, I'll try this, and then I can hang out with my friend. And I made it to, I lived in New Jersey for 4 years, and that's how I got into swimming, was because of this friend. And I made it to states my first year and did really well and got 6th place, which nobody else had done in their first year. So I was really proud of that. And then I moved back to Canada, and my mom forced me to go to tryouts. I didn't want to go. I was like, oh, like, swimming was good, but I'm kind of over it. And she forced me to go to tryouts, and I made it on one of the like upper levels in the club for where I was at. It was the Mississauga Swimming Club.
And how old were you?
I was, I want to say 11 or 12 at this point, around there. And I tried out, got in, and next thing I knew I was just going to practice. And I think I had an attendance percentage of like 40 or 50%. The only reason I know this is because my coach told me. And I was still like making junior nationals and going to nationals and stuff. And the reason they wouldn't put me up another group was because of my attendance rate. And that's where I kind of realized, okay, like, maybe I need to start taking this more seriously. And then I was doing really well. I decided to switch clubs, and that's where I started swimming for someone named Kevin Thorburn. And I think he's had more of an impact on my life than any other coach, him and my other coach, Ben. But he really explained to me like what ethic is, work ethic, and wanting to do well and having drive and having something, like having a goal and believing that you can do, like, reach that goal and how to get there. So I went from, like I told you, the very low participation work ethic to 100%. And I remember the first week of being on that group, I think I got out every day and cried to him. I was like, I can't do this. This is too hard. But it made me a lot faster and a lot stronger, and that's when I started making the Canadian team.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
It was pretty crazy. I think I was 14, and I was on the junior national team. And once you are on the junior national team, you can start getting perks like you get funding, you get to go on trips. I was getting to go to like Budapest, Fiji. I went to Germany. I went to France.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool. You get to travel a lot for swimming. It was a great experience. But I definitely didn't have an appreciation for it yet. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, some of my friends are also on the Canadian team. I get to travel. And looking back, I think I had a very different experience than the average person getting to do this. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about like perseverance and work ethic, and I'm still learning. Yeah.
So was it at that point when you got into the junior national team that you were like, I want to take it all the way to the Olympics?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think part of me always wanted to go to the Olympics. I wanted to go to the Olympics so bad that I decided to be homeschooled and wanted to train full-time for the High Performance Center of Ontario, which was a very select group. There was 7 or 8 of us and like 4 coaches, and we were constantly traveling. I was more out of the country than I was in Canada, so it was pretty cool.
Did you like that though?
I did. Okay. I liked it. I think it definitely had a toll on me.
Yeah, like how do you form that community around yourself?
Yeah.
I guess you have teammates though that are kind of with you.
They are. There was a wide range. I was the youngest one on the group. So the next person, her name was Kyla. We're still very good friends. And she was 17. I was 16 at the time. And the oldest person on the group was 26. So there was a big age gap. Most people were out of college and were professional swimmers. I was in high school. And I was still going to school. And I thought I still wanted to go to college, and my coach was training me to be a professional who was going to go to the Olympics and win a medal. And that was my only goal. That was my only worth to the program. That was basically what my whole life was about, which was pretty crazy because I don't think that was healthy. I don't think it was healthy long term. I think for a year it was good for me, and then by the second year I started realizing like I'm not happy and I don't think this is good for me, because anytime I'd have a bad day, I'd be like, okay, well, it's worth it because I'm going to go to the Olympics. And then as the Olympic trials were approaching, I'm like, what if I went through all of this and I don't make the Olympics?
Yeah.
So. And
then COVID happened.
And
so
then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, big change of plans.
Yeah. But. Is that something that you think a lot of athletes deal with? The idea of always identifying really who they are with their sport and seeing themselves just as an athlete rather than as an overall person.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think some people do it better than others. Some people do find passions and other things that drive them, but I've heard I'm going to give 2 different examples. One, I think a lot of Olympians, there's actually a thing where people go to the Olympics and are severely depressed after they go. Because they make the Olympics and then they're like, okay, I've achieved my goal, now what? Like, I've worked so much of my life to get here, and now I'm depressed. I thought I would be more happy with myself. I didn't enjoy the process of getting here and the toll it took on my body. And I didn't, even if they do as well as they had hoped, they're like, okay, I thought I'd feel more proud of myself. Now what do? I haven't really done anything else. So where do I go now? And then another thing, I've met with other alum who graduated from USC, and they've said the transition from being a full-time swimmer to working in the real world, they're like, so much of my life was competitive and based on times and having those results right in front of you. And then you go and work for a company where you're not necessarily competing directly with anyone, and you can kind of put into it whatever you want. And you're like, where's the drive and the motivation to get these results? So it's very hard to kind of find that balance and that lifestyle after swimming, after you've done it for so many years, if you don't have other passions or hobbies outside of the sport. So
it's important to make sure you do find those passions early on.
Yes.
Okay. So then you went through all this, didn't go to the Olympics after the injury. You started touring different schools and you chose USC. What was the transition like actually coming to USC, being put into the system, and really being one of the team?
It was honestly probably different than that average athlete that comes to college because I came during a pandemic. So USC was fully online my first year as a freshman. But even so, I love school. I think that's one thing I learned from being homeschooled is that I'm a person who loves school. And anytime I have a bad class or I'm just tired through the day, I think about like the time I was homeschooled and I'm like, I love school. Which is so weird because so many of my friends do not enjoy school and I'm like, if only you knew. Like, you try homeschooling and then you'll love school. I also think I enjoyed the change from having 7 people on my team to having like 50 or 60. It's like you walk into a community. That's one thing that being an athlete and being on a team does if you come into college. You don't have to go to mixers or fraternity events. You automatically have like a community where you have like 50 people you could call if you ever got in an accident or were injured. Like, I remember when I first came down, I got in an accident and that's how I got injured. And I had 4 of the guys on my team like taking care of me and like helping me out, and then my coach the next day took me to the hospital. So I didn't even like know a lot of these people, and they immediately were like my support system.
Yeah.
Which is why my parents were so comfortable sending me down here during a pandemic when they couldn't even cross the border, because they're like, okay, she has people down there that will take care of her and look after her, and we don't have to worry about that as much.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Just that feeling of as soon as you enter, you have that immediate community around you. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
And is there competition within the team itself?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially, I'm on relays.
Okay.
So I think at times, of course, you're wanting your team to do the best. Mm-hmm. But if I get pulled off a relay, I'm going to be pissed. Like, I want to be on that relay. Like, I'm a sprinter. And I think that can be competitive of like, oh, why am I not in that position? You can also put only a certain number of people in each event at dual meets, or you can only bring a certain number of people to Pac-12. So if there's too many people on the team, they have to leave a few behind. So no one ever wants to be that person. But it's interesting. Also in college, there's people with different motivations. Some people are like, okay, I know I'm going to be done in about a year. I'm probably not going to get any faster. I'm just doing it to stay fit. And then you have people who are like, oh, I want to go to the Olympics and I want to win a gold medal. So you got the extremes of both ends. So some people care a lot more about the competition than others.
Isn't it hard, though, to just do it more casually and to stay in shape if you're mixing all of these long practice sessions and everything with the schoolwork?
Yes. And then it gets difficult because some of those people are on scholarship. Mm-hmm. So then are they staying because they want to swim, or are they staying because they want their cut to stay in school? Gotcha. Which is hard. It's hard for the head coach especially because you're not going to motivate everyone the same way. Mm-hmm. And some people they've had to cut because of it. They're like, I know you're not going to perform how we need you to, and you're hurting the team more being here than you actually are helping us at meets. Mm-hmm. So, like, why would I keep you here if you're not attributing, like, what I need from you to the team?
And how do you feel about that?
I think it's valid. I do. I don't think I'm one of those people who is trying to get a free scholarship. Mm-hmm. So I can get frustrated with the people who are there who aren't putting in effort because it makes it harder for me too. If I'm in a hard practice and I want to be in the A final at NCAAs and that's my goal, I want someone next to me who's pushing me, who's supporting me in that goal and may have a similar goal or at least wants to help me reach that goal. I don't want someone who's only there because they want to get their free scholarship. Yeah. So your team is, everybody's obviously there for their own reasons, but ultimately, like, I want to get an NCAA ring by the time I graduate, and we're not going to do that if people on the team are not there to get better. Because you all are, the team I say would be the average of everyone. So if there's more people that are there for the scholarship than there are to win, like, the gold medal, then you're hurting your team. If it's the other way, you're going to move up the average. Mm-hmm. So.
And how is USC on average?
I think they're doing really good. Yeah. I think we have a different head coach this year. Mm-hmm. She's new. And I think her big thing is, if you don't want to be here, come tell me, I'll cut you. Like, if you're not here every day, then why are you here? Like, if you don't love this and you don't want to train, why do you put this much time into it? So I think that's a bit of a harsh statement, because everyone has bad days. Mm-hmm. I've had bad days. Sometimes I wake up in the morning at 5 and I don't like do cartwheels and I'm like, I want to go swim and jump in a cold pool. But I think I want what I want to look back on at the end of college is that I did everything I could to be as fast as I could. So that is my goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the actual practice sessions go and a typical day in your life, what does that look like for you?
So most days I have double practice.
Okay.
Which means practice starts at 6 a.m.
It's painful.
Yes, it is, especially in the winter months when it's cold or if it's raining.
Mm-hmm. Are the pools heated though?
It is, but it's not that warm.
Okay.
You'd be surprised. It's actually pretty cold. It takes you like a couple hundred meters to start feeling like your hairs aren't sticking right up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so cold. Like, people will walk out in their bathing suits and their jackets, and the coaches are like, you have to be in by this time, and by the end they're like pushing you in a little bit. So that's interesting. But sorry, I forgot the question.
No, so just like, what's a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so sorry, 6 a.m. practice.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll have classes through the day, and then those are usually pretty back-to-back because we can't do a lot of the afternoon classes because we have practice again at 2. And then we'll have weights for an hour, and then an hour and a half swim or an hour swim, depending on the day. And then you go eat at the athlete dining hall after. Usually we all go eat together, which is nice. Mm-hmm. And then you have night classes, or you don't, and you go home and study and do your homework, and then you do it again the next day. Mm-hmm. Which by Friday, your body's hurting a lot.
What kind of recovery methods do you guys have?
Some people do ice and hot and cold tubs. So you go, there's a training room at USC where you can go do like a minute in the hot tub, a minute in the cold tub, a minute in the hot tub, and you go back and forth, and then your muscles can relax and it releases the lactate, which you've like built up from practice. Otherwise, you can go see the trainer if you're having like some injuries or PT and stuff. But otherwise, I think the best form of recovery is just making sure you're getting the nutrition you need and the sleep, which is hard because as a student athlete, sometimes I'll go like the morning without eating, and it's just because I'm so busy that I don't even realize I haven't had breakfast. And then I'll stay up late doing work, and then I'm like, oh my god, I have to be up at 5 tomorrow, and I don't have time to nap tomorrow. So by the time you get to Friday, you've kind of like lost out on a lot of sleep and the sleep that your body needs to recover. So some weeks are harder than others. It just depends on how much work you have and how hard practices are, because some weeks are harder than others again.
How do you mentally stay in it that much?
You just have to have little things you look forward to. So, for example, like this weekend was the first weekend I've had no recruits and no meets this whole year. So, look, this weekend I had that to look forward to. I was like, oh, I can sleep for 12 hours if I really want to, and I can catch up on work and not feel as stressed next week, which in my mind I'm like, oh, yippee, like that's so fun. But honestly, like, you gotta just keep your goals in mind, because if you lose track of why you're doing it, it makes it a lot harder to motivate yourself to get to practice when your body's hurting so much and you feel like you can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
So.
And then, because it's especially a year-round thing, it's not like other sports like football that's only in the fall.
Yeah.
You guys are always on the clock, always working. Do the practices change? So I know you said it was a 2 a day for most days. Is it like that in the spring semester as well?
Yes.
Damn.
Sometimes it'll change a little bit. Like, you'll have maybe Tuesday morning instead of Monday morning. But, yeah, you stay at 20 hours all year. The only thing that changes is we start our college season from August to March when we have NCAAs, and then you go into the international season. So I have a 2-week gap between when I have NCAAs and when I have to qualify for Worlds. and I fly back to Canada and go do that this year.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same in 2024 when I leave from NCAA's and I go immediately to Olympic trials. So you kind of end your college season, but if you have aspirations to swim internationally, you go immediately into doing that.
And do most people have those aspirations?
Some do.
Okay.
I'd say there's maybe 8 to 10 people on the team, like the women's team, which is about like half, maybe a little less than half. Most people still train all year, but they will go to like nationals or some TYR Pro Series events around the country. And then some people go to like Worlds and the Olympics and those events, which are just different.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you find the coaches to help you get there for the international? Because it's not like, is it linked through the college, or how does that work?
Sometimes the college will send a coach with you. My coach last year came with me to World Trials, which was really awesome to have him there. But otherwise, I can also go back and swim for my team in Canada. So I'll go with that team, and that coach will support me. I just have to reach out to them. And it kind of depends on the person. So my roommate swims for Ecuador, and her dad is her coach, so he'll travel with her to like the Olympics or South American Games and those sort of events. But it just depends on if enough people are going to the meet, and also your relationship with the coach.
Okay. So for you, do you have a preference? Like, would you rather be on the Canada team versus over here?
Do you mean like who goes with me to meets? I don't know. Honestly, I think a coach here, just because I spend so much time here and it's been a while since I've trained back with the Canadian team. Also, my coach who was on the Canadian team, the one who I said I struggled with for a couple of years while I was being homeschooled, he got fired. So I think there wasn't any announcement of why he got fired, but he moved back to I think Spain, and now he coaches in Spain. So I don't have that relationship to go back and swim under him anymore. It's a different coach. But the other coaches offered for me to come swim under him too. So I have the option. It's kind of what I choose to go with.
Okay. I feel like that's something a lot of athletes out there can really resonate with you. The fact of dealing with a crappy coach at the end of the day. Somebody that makes your life harder versus encouraging you to really always be your best and motivating you the right way to be that.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that personally?
I struggle with it. I think I went from being very naive, thinking, okay, like if I swim for this person who has made this many Olympians and has gotten this many gold medals, then I will get a gold medal. Therefore, I will do anything for this person and listen to every word they have to say, which took a toll on me because they never had anything positive to say. So I had too much respect for the person, and I think that's where I lost a lot of my self-respect, where I became very like unmotivated towards the end to like want to perform well, because I felt like I was doing it more out of fear and of pleasing this coach than because I actually wanted to make the Olympics, which is very hard and sad, honestly. But just in terms of like bad coaches, there's different ways of motivating people, and also different people get motivated different ways. So like my version of a good coach isn't necessarily the same as somebody else's good coach, and I think it's the same with bosses or colleagues or any person in life. But I think I do well under a coach, one that stays on top of me and doesn't let me get away with not trying. I think a lot of coaches can get kind of lazy if you don't try. They'll just be like, okay, well, why do I put in the effort if you're not going to put in the effort? And then they never critique you, you know? So I do well when I know that my coach is watching me or will call me out if I don't go too fast. But I also think I do well with getting that encouragement. I think there are times and places where you need to say, that was a great race, good job, but here's also what you can do well. I was only getting the, oh, like, you're swimming slow. I got called every name in the book, and over 2 years never got one compliment. So I was like, okay, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever think about quitting and leaving, or the
Yeah.
idea of just, he's this great coach that's brought out all these Olympic athletes, I have to stick with it?
Yeah, I think I did. I think if I was smart, I probably would have left. I think also, too, I cared too much of like, oh, well, if I leave, what does that say about me? Like, I'm a quitter. I didn't fully see it through. Then what he's saying about me is true. And I'm not trying, which I was. That was his tactic of like, oh, you're not trying. So that'll make you go faster. Which for a while it did. I got way faster. But I think that eventually causes burnout. That only works for so long.
Yeah.
So I think, by the end, that didn't work for me.
Well, luckily you found a better coach who is now actually more supportive of you
Yes.
and everything like that. As far as actually going to the Worlds, tryouts, all those things, what does the process look like, and how exciting is it to really compete with some of the best athletes in the world?
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'd say like training with them too is pretty cool, because then you see the struggles are like every athlete deals with different struggles, and when you're at those trials, you're like, oh my gosh, they do everything perfect. But then when you train with them, you see, oh my gosh, they have so many little things they also work on, and the effort that they put into like perfecting every single turn or stroke, which is pretty cool. But going to those trials, it's insane seeing how much time people can drop and like pop out of nowhere. For example, one girl I trained with, when she was 16, she made the Olympics, and which was a fluke. It was a fluke for her to make the Olympics.
Because she was 16?
Because she was, well, I think she might have been 15 at the time. And then by the time she got to the Olympics, she was 16. And then she dropped even more time and then won a gold medal at the Olympics. So it's crazy going from training with those people to seeing how fast they can go under that much pressure. Because some people will train super fast but can't deal with the pressure. Some people can't deal with the everyday training but respond so well to the pressure and then perform so much better. So it's just interesting seeing those different people.
Yeah. Is it the pressure of just like all the eyes are on you, you've put so much work into this, and now it's about to show off and you're about
Some
to go
people get motivated by the pressure. They're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I love the audience. I love just that setting. Some people are like, oh my gosh, I get stressed out and like internalize, and then they overthink their races, and it doesn't work for them.
What are you like?
I do well under pressure.
Yeah.
I love racing. I can't say I love training. I know some people who like racing, but they get so stressed out and in their head. And not to say like I haven't done that, but I definitely do way better when I'm excited and I just want to like beat the person next to me, because I get very motivated off competition.
Has there been a race that just stands out to you in your career right now? Just like it's your favorite one, the best one that you had. It doesn't have to be like your best time or anything, just like the best experience that you've had.
Okay. I wouldn't say this is my best experience, but this one stands out to me a lot. I went to the World Cup in Berlin. Oh, sorry, this one was in Budapest. And then we went to the one in Berlin. But the one in Budapest, I made the final in the 100 fly. And nobody else on my team had made that final that night. So I was the only one at the pool with my two coaches. And I think I was very stressed out because I had never been in like a world's final before. And my coach was yelling at me because I forgot to bring like a training suit to the pool, and I had to borrow one from someone else. And that got out all of my jitters because I was like, I don't know. So I moved past that, and then I came second in the final, which was really cool because it was on TV, and when you're in Budapest, people love swimming. So like the crowd is huge, and I was standing next to people like Katinka Hosu and other like people who had like won at Worlds and like big championships in the Olympics, which was really, really amazing. And that race, I didn't even think, like I don't remember a lot of what goes on during my races. I think so much of it is just you can zone out a little bit and just focus on like beating the people next to you, and your body does what you need to do because you train so much that you don't even have to think about what you're doing when you're actually racing. If you do it well and you're good at what you do, I think you don't have to think about it too much.
It just comes innately at that point. Is there a swimmer out there that you just really look up to? That's the model that you want to be?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think growing up I did. But now I think people look up to other people because of what they've done, not necessarily because of like who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from being in the really high intense environments of working with those people, and I look up to the people that are very mentally strong more than what they've done.
And what are some of the lessons you've learned from them?
I've learned to be grateful when you do have good races, because I think it's so easy to like have a really good race and be like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna keep getting faster. And sometimes you do get faster, and sometimes you'll go like a year or two without dropping time, and you're like, wow, like that was a really good race. And at the moment, I really didn't care about it. And I think if you don't take the time to be grateful for like your accomplishments and your races, then swimmers can get pretty snobby and have egos. I think a lot of swimmers have egos because you're very attached to like your times and how you're doing compared to others. And then also, I just think it can affect you mentally a lot, because if you aren't getting constantly faster, then why do it? So
that's that.
Yeah.
As far as actually mixing it in with business administration, what are you hoping to do with that degree?
So I'm not sure. I think it does stress me out a little bit less now than before, but I'm not too sure what I want to do. I know that I love business. It's competitive. I think I do well in competitive environments.
Maybe just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But I'm not too sure on what I want to do, but I've been limiting down kind of the things that I don't want to do.
Okay.
I know that I love working in sports. I know I love female athlete mental health. And I love the idea of having my own brand or company and being able to take something with the profits of it and turning it into something that would be impactful for female athletes. I think female athletes go so like unrecognized, and they don't get the credit that they need a lot of the time solely because of their gender, which is frustrating, but it's also just how the world is. I think you can only like be frustrated with it for as long as you want, but you can try and change it and try and have an impact on it, which I'd love to do with my life. I just don't know if that's what I want to spend my life, and that's what my job would be. So I'm still kind of working through that. Right now I'm working with my roommate, who I've been telling you about creating a company that is training suits. It's called Milky Suits, and we're working on our prototypes right now, and we haven't launched it or our website, but I'm very excited for that. And we want to have a very big involvement in female athlete mental health and turning some of the proceeds into awareness in the sport of swimming.
Wow.
Yeah. And
how would you actually combine the female mental health to your brand name besides the donations to charity? So we're still working through that. I think at some point we want to talk to other platforms that already do mental health with female athletes. I know a portion of our proceeds we've already said will go towards one of those organizations, but we also want to have like videos that are posted on our platforms just talking about some of the day-to-day issues that female athletes have. Like, female athletes have eating disorders and have mental health struggles and have anxiety and stress, and I don't think it's talked about. And I didn't know about any of it until I had it. So I think just having that outlet of awareness can impact so many young female athletes to learn that they're not alone in this, and that they can talk about this and they can feel it and know that it will pass, and they can learn from it and make a difference with it. So say there's a female athlete out there that's listening to this and is going through a lot of those stresses. Maybe they start to develop an eating disorder, their whole life is committed to the sport, and they're giving everything they have to it to an unhealthy level. What kind of advice would you give to somebody in that situation?
I'd say never feel ashamed. I think I felt so much shame when I had my mental health struggles, and I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone about it because then I'd feel judged that I wasn't mentally strong enough to be dealing with what I was dealing with. I would just say that's my number one. I'd say talk to someone. Doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a friend. It could be a stranger. It could be...
Could be on a podcast.
Could be on a podcast. You can get out there. But I think I was so afraid to talk to my parents because I thought that they would judge me. I was like, okay, they want what's best for me, and I feel like they want me to make the Olympics too. So if I tell them that I'm hating swimming and I'm hating myself right now and I'm not loving who I am, they're going to be like, okay, well, we're not proud of you because we wanted you to do that too. So I didn't feel like I could go to my parents, which I think was because my coach maybe believed that my parents would say that, not because that's actually how my parents would respond.
Wait, your coach actually told you that's what your parents would think?
So I felt very isolated because of how my coach made me feel. And because of that, I didn't reach out for help until I think, not it was too late. Like, it was just, I think it was too late. I think I should have reached out a lot sooner because I think I'm still dealing with a lot of the stuff that was inflicted upon me by my coach. And like, I'm really happy to be where I am today in swimming and the person I am and like my ability to talk about this with other people. But do I wish I hadn't gone through that? Of course. Like, I wish I had a different experience. But that's life. Like, you learn through like the difficult situation. So I'm grateful for that.
You learn, but if you could have done anything differently, would there have been anything you could have done, like maybe to identify the signs of an unhealthy relationship with a coach where they're putting a lot of this extra stress and pressure on you?
Yeah, I just say if you get to a point where you're doing it for someone else and not for yourself, then maybe question why you're doing it, or if this is the right person to be coaching you. By like the end, I was just in fear of disappointing my coach, and not because I wanted to swim well or make the Olympics. And it left me in a very like shallow like hole. So I'd say that's one. Two, if you're never feeling proud of like your races or your game, any sport, like if you're never feeling proud of or able to leave something noticing what you did good or what you did well, and you're only constantly focusing on the bad, then maybe you also should look at that. And then one other thing, if your coach is using a lot of explicit words and is throwing things and you are genuinely scared, then that's probably not good either.
You're not in a great place.
You're probably not in a good place if you're like actually afraid of your coach.
Okay.
So I'd say those three things.
I'm glad you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And you kind of overcame that. Do you feel like you still feel that need, though, even here with a better coach? That I think to some degree, obviously, you don't want to disappoint your coach and you're not doing it and you're doing it more for yourself. But do you ever catch yourself maybe going back, as in you're not doing it for you, but you're doing it for other people?
The only extent I would say that would be I'm doing it for my team, which I think is motivational. Yeah. Because I want my team to do well. Sometimes if I'm not feeling 100% or I'm sick, I know like me staying home and being sick versus going to the pool and maybe not having the best practice, like at least if I'm at the pool with the team, I feel like there's something I can do to help the person beside me. Like, even if I'm going slow, like if I can motivate them and be like, I'm here but I'm sick and I'm doing my best and showing that I want to be here, I can help my team. So I think that's the only point where I'm not doing it for my coach, but I'm doing it for the collective good of the entire team. If I'm not doing it for myself.
Yeah. How connected are you guys also with the different alums and everything that came out from USC? Do they help you guys practice, show you the ropes a little bit, and maybe internationals or at the world stage?
I think they're doing a better job. We have alumni relays once a year, which is really fun because all the alum swimmers come back, and we get to meet a lot of other people who are in tons of different industries. But I think that's one thing we could do better. I'd love to meet more people. I love talking to people and reaching out to people and hearing about their journeys and where they are now. And I've gotten into that more this semester, but that's because of my goals of doing that and not as much because like our team sets that up. But also our coaches are coaches. They're not career coaches. I would say the school does have the resources for athletes though to go to advisors about career services. Okay. So that is good.
So if you had a magic wand though, and you could identify some of the biggest issues in the USC student athletics, what are some of these issues you want to address and how would you fix them?
I think one big thing would be female athlete mental health. I'd love to do something with that. I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. Because I think a lot of the struggles that a male athlete goes through and what a female athlete goes through are very different. If you think about how male athletes are held on a pedestal for being strong and being fit, and then you look at female athletes who, just look at the cover of Sports Illustrated. Is it an athlete or is it a model? It's a model. I will tell you that right now. It's not an athlete. That person probably weighs 110 pounds and has barely any muscle on their body. So if you look at that as a female athlete and you think, oh, is that what's expected of me? That's why like so many athletes have eating disorders. Because they're like, I don't want to be strong. That's not what's considered feminine or ideal in society. I want to be pretty and I want to, I don't know. So
you want to like go to that standard that the society is putting on you, that you have to be very feminine in the way that you do everything.
Yeah, so I don't think it's nearly talked about enough of what's expected as a female athlete. I know I can talk about from my experience. I think you'd be surprised how many female athletes have eating disorders, and like it's almost never talked about. I was once on a team where every single person on the team had an eating disorder, and they thought it was justified because that person's doing it too and it's normal, which it's not. I think if you ever feel like you need to throw up because you've ate too much and your coach is like, oh, you're gaining too much weight, like that's not healthy. Which in your head is like, okay, that makes sense, but like when you're an athlete and you're a female and you're in that environment, you feel justified in doing it, which is really psychologically harming and physically harming.
What if some of these athletes, what are some of the things these athletes do to help overcome that? Or do you feel like there's nothing really set in place in order to monitor it, and that could be something that could be improved upon?
I don't think there's anything to monitor it.
Okay.
I think if you want to get better, you decide you want to get better right now.
Gotcha.
Of course, you can go get sports psych, or you can decide you want to stop doing it. But I know people who've had eating disorders for years and think it's normal, and it's really hard, especially like being friends with them, because you're like, I want you to want to help yourself. I can speak from my own personal experience. Like, I had an eating disorder at one point. My coach made me believe that I needed to be like 140 pounds going into Olympic trials, and while we were on training camp, like I ate too much one night and he weighed us in the next morning and then screamed at me in front of the whole group because I had gained 4 pounds over one night, which in the grand scheme of things, your body fluctuates that much from drinking water and eating food. Like, that's just normal. That's not muscle weight or fat weight. It's just weight. Like, weight really doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And if I feel better training, eating more, which I do, then why should I feel bad about it?
Yeah. Do you feel like this is a big swim thing, or do you think it's across all the different sports?
I can't speak for all the other sports.
Okay.
I will say that. I think I've heard about it in other sports, but I can't speak on it because I only swim.
Yeah.
I will say, though, female athletes, like swimmers, are in bathing suits. So your body is constantly exposed in a tight bathing suit more than, I don't know, maybe a soccer player.
Yeah.
I can't speak on it, but if you're constantly feeling exposed like that to like your coaches and your peers, if you feel like you're gaining weight, you might feel a little more shamed about it because you are so exposed and it's maybe a little more obvious. So I could see that playing a role in it too.
Does the team not have like a therapist or somebody that you guys can all talk to help work through all these issues?
No. I'd say either sports psych, which is offered by the athletics department, but you have to choose to go to that, which not everyone does.
Do you think it would be a better idea to make it like mandatory once a month sessions or something?
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
Having check-ins, I think check-ins are so important. And I think especially being a student athlete, you think, or at least I can speak on my experience. I've been like, oh, I have swimming, I have school, I have to sleep and make sure I get enough sleep. So why would I want to sign up for anything additional? Because I see it as work.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I don't want to go take an hour out of my week every week to go to sports psych because that's an additional thing I have to do. But I've now realized that's so pivotal to everything else that I go to sports psych once a week and I know that it has an impact on the rest of my week. And it actually gives me more mental energy because I can get out everything that I need to talk about in that 1 hour session than kind of pushing it down and being like, everything's fine, everything's okay, and getting mentally burnt out, which happens to a lot of athletes too.
So if you had to do that magic wand again, would you make it more of a mandatory thing, make sure everybody gets checked in? So that way, because I feel if you have one person in the team who isn't always fully there, and a lot of people that are always going to these therapy sessions, they're working through their issues, they're feeling better about it, that one person could kind of bring everybody else down a little bit mentally if they're not in the right place.
Yeah, I think having like team support once a month would be really helpful. At least so we could talk about kind of the struggles that maybe other people are going through too. I know an example, like this week mentally was really hard on me. We are in the grind of training. People are going through midterms. And like I said, we hadn't had a week off since the beginning of the year, weekend off since the beginning of the year. So this week was really hard. And I thought I was alone in that. And I just kind of felt very mentally exhausted. And towards the end of the week, I started checking in with more people, realizing everyone's feeling this way. And if we can all kind of realize that this is something that's going on, you're not alone in it, it's really helpful. Because then you're like, okay, maybe it's just the situation, it's not me. And being able to separate yourself from that can give you a lot of mental peace and clarity of, oh, it's just where I am in the year. It's a tough part of training. It's a tough part academically. And I'm going to get through this and I'm going to be stronger because of it.
You just have to put in the work.
Yeah.
You have to grind through it.
Exactly.
If you could go back in time and see yourself when you just chose USC, you're about to come in, what kind of advice would you give to yourself to maybe succeed, to work through some of the issues that you had to go through? What kind of advice would you give that freshman Hannah?
I would tell myself that's hard. I've never been asked that question. Wow. I think I would tell myself to be confident. I think that's the hardest thing with being an athlete and a swimmer and just trying to play so many different roles. Like, I'm a leader on the team. I am trying to start my own business. I'm Canadian. I'm also just a student. So, like, just being confident, like, not knowing the answers to everything, but just you'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many times I'm like, oh, I'm scared, like that's not my position on the team, like I shouldn't be doing that because I'm not a leader, or when I was younger. And now that I'm a leader, I'm like, wow, like I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like doing the best I can and trying to be there for other people. That's another thing too. I think coming into college, I thought swimming is so much more individual. And it is an individual sport more than like soccer or water polo or football. But in college, you're so much going through the same things as everyone around you. And you're trying to do well as a team, and your team ranking and your team score out of meet. And you're all going through similar struggles. So if you can learn how to be there for other people and be like vulnerable with other people on the team, then they can also be there for you through your struggles. So just trying to be a good teammate will take you so far, and that matters so much more in my mind than swimming well like at a race.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Hannah, thank you so much for taking some time and sitting with us and sharing your story. I felt very enlightened, and now that I know what goes into swimming and also student athletes, I have an even higher amount of respect for you and what you do. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you.
Oh, this is fun.